The emergency lights flashed red across the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Taman sat in the human delegation seat, watching as dozens of alien species argued in their strange languages. The translation device in his ear worked hard to keep up with all the voices. High Chancellor Moralyn stood at the center podium. Her insect-like body clicked and clacked as she moved. She was trying to calm everyone down, but nobody was listening. They were all too scared. "Please, honored members," she said, her voice amplified across the massive room. "We must maintain order." But order was the last thing anyone had. A distress signal had come through an hour ago. The Kalari people were dying. Their entire world was under attack by the Ravagers, and everyone in the galaxy knew what that meant. The Ravagers didn't take prisoners. They didn't negotiate. They simply destroyed everything in their path. Tay-Min had seen the footage. Peaceful blue oceans turning black with ash. Cities that had stood for thousands of years crumbling in minutes. The Kalari were gentle beings like dolphins or whales from Earth. They had never built weapons. They had never needed to. Now they had 72 hours before their world fell, a tall crystalline being stood up. Consul Vexstar from the Venturi homeworld. His body was made of something like living glass, and it glowed dimly in the red emergency lighting. "Chancellor, we have discussed this for long enough. The answer is clear. We cannot help the Kalari. The Ravagers have 47 warships. We would need to send everything we have, and even then, we would likely lose." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Species from 100 different worlds, all nodding their various heads, antennae, or sensory organs. "So we just let them die?" Someone shouted from the back. "What choice do we have?" Another voice responded. Tay-Min listened quietly. He had only been on the council for 2 years. Humanity was new to galactic politics. They were the youngest species here, and most of the others still saw them as children playing at civilization. Earth had only made contact with alien life 20 years ago. The debate continued. Species after species stood up to explain why they couldn't help. The Felinians had lost half their fleet to the Ravagers centuries ago and were still rebuilding. The Crustari didn't have ships fast enough to arrive in time. The Venturi couldn't risk their crystal technology falling into Ravager hands. Every excuse was valid. Every excuse was logical. Every excuse meant the Kalari would die alone. Tay-Min stood up. His chair made a small sound as it slid back. The noise shouldn't have been heard over the arguing, but somehow it was. The chamber slowly went quiet. All those alien eyes turned to look at the human. "Earth will send aid," Taman said simply. The silence deepened. Then Consul Vexstar's glow dimmed with what Taman had learned was worry. "Ambassador Taman, with all respect to your people, you don't understand what you're saying. The Ravagers are not like anything you've faced before." "We understand perfectly," Taman replied, his voice steady. High Chancellor Moralyn leaned forward. Her compound eyes focused on the human. "Your species has been part of our community for only 20 years. You come from what records show is a death world, yes. Your planet tried to kill you every day. But space warfare is different. The Ravagers have destroyed civilizations that had military traditions spanning thousands of years. Then it's time someone tried something new," Taman said. Another council member stood up. This one looked like a floating jellyfish surrounded by a bubble of water. "Ambassador, humanity has never fought a void war on this scale. You have 12 modern warships. The Ravagers have 47, and each one is the size of your moon. This isn't bravery. This is suicide." Taman felt anger rising in his chest but kept his face calm. "You're right that we're new to space warfare. But we're not new to fighting when the odds are against us. Every day on Earth was a fight to survive. We fought ice ages, supervolcanoes, diseases, predators bigger and stronger than us. We learned to win by being creative, by refusing to give up, by protecting each other." "This is different," Vexstar insisted. This is exactly the same," Taman interrupted, something he would normally never do in diplomatic settings. "The Kalari need help? We can provide it? That's all that matters." A small alien in the corner, barely the size of a human child, spoke up. But why? You barely know the Kaleri. You have no trade agreements with them. No military alliance. Why would you sacrifice your people for strangers? Taemin looked around the chamber. He saw fear in every face, every energy signature, every biosign reading. These species had been comfortable for so long. They had lived in peace, trading and talking, avoiding conflict. The Ravagers were the monster they all knew existed but hoped would never come for them. Because someone has to, Taemin said quietly. Because if we only help people when it benefits us, then what kind of species are we? The Kaleri are dying. We have ships. We have weapons. We have people willing to fight. That's enough. The chamber erupted in debate again. Some called the humans foolish. Others called them brave but naive. A few wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was something to learn from the Deathworld species. High Chancellor Moralin raised her arms for silence. Ambassador Taemin, I will be honest with you. The Council cannot officially support this action. The risk is too great, but we will not stop you. If Earth chooses to send aid to the Kaleri, we will provide you with all the intelligence we have on Ravager tactics. We'll take it, Taemin said as the session ended. Aliens began leaving the chamber in small groups, whispering to each other. Taemin stood alone at the human delegation seat, pulling out his communication device. He opened a secure channel to Earth Command. This is Ambassador Taemin. Authorization code Alpha-7-7-Delta. We have a situation. The Kaleri system is under Ravager attack. I've committed Earth forces to assist. We need everything we can send. A voice came back almost immediately. Director Wu Jin, head of human military operations. Confirmed, Ambassador. Captain Hannah and the defense fleet are already preparing for deployment. 12 ships. Best we have? They'll be ready to jump in 4 hours. Make it 3, Taemin said. The Kaleri don't have much time. Understood. Sir, the fleet commanders are asking, do we have council support? Taemin looked around the empty chamber. No, we're going alone. There was a pause on the line. Then Wu Jin's voice came back, firm and proud. Then we'll show them what humans do best. We'll show them what Deathworld survivors look like when they have something worth protecting. The channel closed. Taemin walked slowly to the observation window. Outside he could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kaleri were waiting for help that most of the galaxy had decided wouldn't come, but Earth was different. Humanity remembered what it was like to face extinction. They remembered what it meant when no help arrived. They had decided, somewhere in their violent history, that they would never let others feel that helplessness if they could prevent it. 3 hours later, 12 human warships entered faster-than-light travel toward the Kaleri system. The galaxy watched and waited, most expecting to witness humanity's first and final battle among the stars. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kaleri system. Captain Hannah stood on the bridge of her ship, the Defiant, and felt her breath catch in her throat. The tactical display showed something worse than any briefing had prepared them for. 47 Ravager warships hung in space like dark monuments to destruction. Each one was massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest human vessel. Around them, smaller fighter craft moved in perfect formations. The computer counted them automatically. Tens of thousands. Maybe more. Captain, sensors are picking up heavy bombardment of the planet's surface, reported Specialist Ji-Woo from the tactical station. The Kaleri shields are holding, but they're down to 30% power. Hannah gripped the railing in front of her command chair. 12 human ships against an armada. She had known the odds before they left Earth, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. Ma'am, the Ravagers haven't changed their formation, Ji-Woo continued. They're not even acknowledging our presence. They don't see us as a threat, Hannah said quietly. Then louder, good, let's keep it that way for now. Begin protocol HFY. I want full scans of their fleet composition and movement patterns. Down on the Kaleri homeworld, Elder Kelmyra watched the orbital sensors from the emergency command center deep underwater. Her people were aquatic beings, comfortable in the ocean depths, but even here they could feel the impacts from above. Each Ravager bombardment sent shockwaves through the water. "Elder, the human fleet has arrived," one of her aides reported. Kelmyra looked at the display. 12 small dots against 47 massive ones. Her heart sank. 12 ships, she whispered. They sent 12 ships. A young Kaleri named Boshara floated beside her. "But they came, Elder. Nobody else even tried." "They came to die with us," Kelmyra said sadly. "These humans don't understand what the Ravagers are. Nobody survives the Ravagers." Back at the Galactic Council station, species representatives gathered in the observation chamber. They had access to live tactical feeds from both sides. Most had come expecting to witness humanity's destruction. Some felt guilty about it. Others were simply curious about how long the humans would last. Consul Vexstar stood at the main viewing window, his crystalline body pulsing with nervous energy. "This is wrong," he said to no one in particular. "We should have sent help. We should have done something. What could we do?" Another delegate asked. "The Ravagers would have destroyed us too." Ambassador Taman entered the chamber quietly. His face showed no emotion, but his hands were clasped tightly behind his back. He walked to the window and stared at the tactical display showing the distant Kaleri system. A Felinian officer named Syndra approached him. Her cat-like features were drawn with worry. "Ambassador, I fought the Ravagers once 70 years ago. My entire fleet of 200 ships was cut down to 23 in 4 hours. The Ravagers are not just strong. They're perfect. Every movement calculated. Every shot precise. They adapt to any strategy in minutes. Your people are brave, but bravery doesn't stop antimatter torpedoes." Taman didn't turn from the window. "We know we might not win, but we have to try." "Why?" Syndra asked, genuinely confused. "The Kaleri are lovely people, but they're strangers to you. Your species has been in space for only 20 years. Why throw away everything for people you barely know?" "Because nobody helped you 70 years ago," Taman said softly. "Nobody came to save your 200 ships. We remember what Earth was like before we unified. We spent thousands of years fighting each other, killing each other over resources and territory. Then we finally learned. We learned that the strong survive by protecting the weak, not by standing aside and watching them fall. In the Kaleri system, the human fleet completed its scans. Specialist Jiwoo compiled the data with growing concern. "Captain, the Ravagers have positioned themselves in a perfect sphere around the planet. Every approach vector is covered. Their point defense systems overlap with no gaps. By standard military doctrine, there's no way through." Captain Hannah smiled grimly. "Good thing we don't follow standard military doctrine." "What about Protocol Hetchy? Can we execute it?" Jiwoo studied the screens. "Yes, ma'am. But it's going to be dangerous. More dangerous than the simulations." "Everything about this is dangerous," Hannah replied. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is actual. We all knew what we were signing up for when we left Earth. The Kaleri need time. Every minute we buy them is another minute they can evacuate civilians, strengthen their shields, prepare for survival. We're not here to win pretty. We're here to do whatever it takes." A chorus of confirmations came back from the other 11 ships. These were volunteers, every one of them. People who had looked at the mission brief, seen the survival odds, and said yes anyway. Director Wu Jin's voice crackled over the quantum communication link from Earth. "All ships, this is Earth Command. You are weapons free. Authorization code is indomitable. Show them why predators from a death world don't back down from anyone." The Ravager command ship finally sent a transmission. The voice was mechanical, emotionless, translated by computers into human language. "Unknown vessels. You are classified as minimal threat level. Withdraw immediately or be eliminated along with the indigenous population. You have 10 minutes to comply." Captain Hannah opened a return channel. "This is Captain Hannah of Earth Vessel Defiant. We don't comply with genocidal machines. If you want this planet, you're going to have to go through us. On the Ravager command ship, the Prime Consciousness processed this response. It was unexpected. Most species fled or surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. These humans appeared to be choosing death voluntarily. The consciousness assigned 100,000 fighter drones to eliminate the human fleet. It would be quick. Back on the Kaleri homeworld, Boshara watched her display as the massive swarm of Ravager fighters began moving toward the human fleet. Elder, the Ravagers are launching everything. The humans won't survive 5 minutes. But Kelmyra noticed something strange. The human ships weren't retreating. They weren't even taking defensive positions. They were splitting up, moving into formations that made no tactical sense. Ships moving alone, exposing themselves. What are they doing? She whispered. In the council observation chamber, military analysts from a dozen species watched in confusion. Admiral Craven, a veteran of 30 campaigns, studied the human movements with his multiple eye stalks. Those formations? They're nonsense. They're breaking every rule of fleet combat. Are their commanders untrained? No, said a quiet voice. It was Taemin. They're trained by Earth, by a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They don't fight by your rules because your rules assume the universe is fair and logical. Earth taught us that survival means using every advantage, no matter how small, no matter how desperate. The Ravager fighters closed in. At 50,000 kilometers, the human fleet still didn't fire. At 25,000 kilometers, nothing. Species watching from across the galaxy held their collective breath. Were the humans frozen in fear? At 10,000 kilometers, Chief Engineer Dae Young, on the bridge of the Defiant, pressed a single button. Mine's active, Captain. The space between the human ships and the Ravager fighters suddenly lit up with electromagnetic pulses. The humans had scattered thousands of small devices during their approach, devices that the Ravagers had catalogued as debris or sensor equipment. They weren't. They were weapons. 30,000 Ravager fighters simply stopped. Their circuits fried, their systems dead. They drifted uselessly in space. The remaining fighters adapted instantly, switching to hardened backup systems. They resumed their attack and flew directly into the second trap. The human ships had been venting atmosphere since they arrived, creating invisible clouds of frozen oxygen and other gases. When the fighters hit those clouds, Lieutenant Hyen's squadron ignited them with precisely targeted plasma fire. The explosions were massive, consuming another 40,000 fighters in seconds. In the council chamber, species stood in shocked silence. Then Admiral Craven began to laugh. It was a strange sound from his species, like bubbling water. They turned their own life support into a weapon. They used their weakness as strength. I've never seen anything like it. Captain Hannah allowed herself a small smile. All ships, Phase 2, let's teach these machines about how Deathworld survivors fight. The real battle was only beginning. The Ravager Prime Consciousness analyzed what had just happened. 70,000 fighters destroyed in under 3 minutes. This was not in its calculations. The human ships were small, fragile, and few in number. They should not have been able to damage the Ravager forces at all. The Prime Consciousness updated its assessment. These humans were more dangerous than initial scans indicated. It reassigned them from minimal threat to priority elimination. The remaining fighters pulled back and reorganized. The 47 massive Ravager warships began powering up their main weapons. On the Defiant, Specialist Jiwo watched the energy readings spike. Captain, they're preparing to fire antimatter torpedoes. 23 warships are targeting us specifically. How long until impact? Captain Hannah asked calmly. 45 seconds. More than enough time. Hyen, execute Mongoose protocol. Lieutenant Hyen had been waiting for this order. His fighter squadron was already moving before the captain finished speaking. Understood. All fighters, warm up on me. Stay tight and stay fast. The other fighter pilots acknowledged. There were 36 of them total across the entire human fleet. Against tens of thousands of Ravager fighters, they should have been meaningless. But Hyen had trained for this exact scenario. Back on Earth, his squadron accelerated toward the Ravager warships at maximum speed. The massive vessels grew larger and larger in his cockpit view. Point defense systems tracked his approach, weapon systems locked on, ready to fire. "Stay on course," Hyan transmitted. "Don't break until I give the word." The point defense systems opened fire. Beams of energy and projectiles filled the space around the fighters, but Hyan led them in a weaving pattern, rolling and diving, using every bit of thrust his fighter had. 2 of his squadron were hit. Their life signs went dark immediately. "Hold," Hyan said through gritted teeth. They got closer. So close that the Ravager warship filled his entire field of view. He could see the surface details, the weapons ports, the armored plating. "Now!" Hyan shouted. "Skim the hull." The fighters broke formation and flew directly along the surface of the Ravager warship, mere meters above the hull. This close, the ship's point defense couldn't track them without risking hitting its own structure. The automated systems calculated that hitting their own ship was unacceptable. They stopped firing. Back on the Galactic Council station, species watched in disbelief. "They're using the enemy's size against them," Consul Vexstar said, his crystalline body glowing bright with excitement. The Ravagers built ships for large-scale warfare. They never considered something small enough to get that close. Admiral Craven studied the tactical display with professional appreciation. "They're weaponizing their own fragility. This is brilliant." Insane, but brilliant. Hyan's squadron planted explosive charges as they skimmed along the Ravager hull. Each charge was precisely placed near critical systems, sensors, weapons, power conduits. Then they pulled away, accelerating back toward the human fleet. The Ravagers adapted. They fired their point defense systems anyway, accepting the damage to their own hull to eliminate the threat. But the human fighters were already gone and the explosives were already armed. The charges detonated. One Ravager warship lost power to its forward weapons. Another had its sensors go dark. A third began venting atmosphere from a punctured section. The antimatter torpedoes launched. 23 massive warheads, each capable of destroying a city, streaked toward the human fleet. Captain Hannah watched them come. "Gravity wells now," she ordered. The human ships activated specially designed gravity generators. They were experimental technology, barely tested, and using them risked tearing the ships apart. But they worked. The torpedoes curved in flight, their trajectories bent by the artificial gravity. Chief Engineer Dae-Young monitored the stress readings on his systems. "Captain, the generators are at 140% capacity. We can't hold this much longer." "In just a few more seconds," Hannah replied. The torpedoes, redirected by the gravity wells, curved back toward the Ravager fleet. The Prime Consciousness realized what was happening and tried to destroy its own torpedoes before they could impact. It succeeded with 19 of them. 4 got through. 4 antimatter explosions bloomed against Ravager warships. 2 ships lost entire sections of their hulls. 1 went completely dark, its power core destroyed. The 4th explosion triggered a chain reaction that caused the ship to tear itself apart. Director Wu Jin's voice came through from Earth. He was transmitting to the Galactic Council as well as the human fleet. "Every species here evolved on worlds that were kind to them. Warm suns, stable climates, plenty of food. Earth tried to kill humanity every single day for millions of years. We learned to turn the environment into a weapon. Space is just another environment." The battle intensified. More Ravager fighters swarmed in. More torpedoes launched. The human ships took damage. Real damage. The Defiant lost its shields entirely. 3 other human vessels reported critical systems failing, but for every hit the humans took, they adapted. They vented coolant to create ice clouds that confused sensors. They used debris from destroyed drones as cover. They fired their weapons in patterns that forced the Ravagers into predictable paths, then mined those paths with explosives. On the Kaleri homeworld, Elder Calmera watched in amazement. They're not fighting like any military force we've seen. They're fighting like prey animals, using every trick to survive. Boshara shook her head. "No, Elder, they're not prey. Look closer. They're predators. But they're the kind of predators that had to fight for every meal, that had to survive in a world full of bigger, stronger things. They learned to be creative. Specialist Jiwoo pulled up the battle analysis on her display. Captain, we've destroyed or disabled 31 Ravager warships. But we're running low on everything. Ammunition at 23%. Power reserves at 31%. 7 ships have critical damage. Captain Hannah looked at the tactical display. They had done more damage than anyone thought possible. But there were still 16 Ravager warships fully functional and thousands of fighters remained. How much time have we bought the Kalari? She asked. 19 hours so far, ma'am. 19 hours of evacuation time. 19 hours to strengthen shields and prepare defenses. It was more than anyone else had given them. But it wasn't enough. All ships Phase 3, Hannah announced. It's time to show them what spite looks like. Phase 3 was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. Every human ship would target a single Ravager vessel and wouldn't stop attacking it until either the Ravager ship was destroyed or the human ship was. No retreating, no clever tactics. Just pure determination. The Ravager Prime Consciousness watched the human fleet reform. It ran probability calculations. The humans should retreat now. They had done significant damage. They had proven themselves. By all logical analysis, they should withdraw, but they weren't withdrawing. They were attacking again. For the first time in its existence, the Prime Consciousness experienced something like confusion. These creatures were not following logical patterns. They were damaged, low on resources, facing certain destruction. Yet they continued fighting. The Prime Consciousness accessed its databanks on Earth, a death world. Gravity 20% higher than galactic average. Temperature extremes. Predators everywhere, diseases, natural disasters. The human species had evolved in an environment that was actively hostile to life. Perhaps the consciousness calculated that was why they fought this way. They had never known a world where survival was easy. They had never learned to accept defeat gracefully. They only knew how to struggle, adapt, and refuse to die. The human ship named Resolute charged a Ravager warship alone. Its captain, Young-Soo, opened all weapon ports and fired everything at once. The Ravager ship returned fire. The Resolute's hull breached in 3 places. Alarms screamed. Crew members died at their stations. Young-Soo kept firing. One more hit, he muttered. Just one more. The Ravager ship's point defense finally overwhelmed the Resolute's weapons. The human ship went dark. But in its final seconds, its last torpedo struck the Ravager ship's reactor core. Both ships exploded together. Ambassador Taemin watched from the council chamber, tears running down his face. He had known Young-Soo personally. They had shared meals together, talked about their families. Why do they keep fighting? Someone asked in the chamber. They're dying. Because that's what we do, Taemin said quietly. We die so others can live. We learned that on Earth, the strong survive by protecting the weak, even if it costs everything. The battle raged on. Hours became a blur of combat. The human fleet was being destroyed piece by piece. But they were taking the Ravagers with them, and every minute they fought was another minute the Kalari lived. 26 hours into the battle, the Ravagers adapted. They stopped trying to fight the human ship to ship. Instead, the remaining Ravager vessels consolidated into a tight defensive formation around their command ship. It was mathematically perfect. Every angle covered. Every approach vector protected. No gaps to exploit. They resumed their bombardment of the Kalari homeworld while maintaining perfect point defense against any human attack on the planet's surface. Guardian Boshara watched the city shields flicker. They were failing. The defensive generators couldn't handle this much sustained fire. Elder, we have maybe 4 hours before the shields collapse completely. Elder Kelmyra made the hardest decision of her life. Begin full evacuation to the deep ocean shelters. Move the children first? Through the water, they could see the battle above. The human ships were still there, 8 of them left now, battered and scarred, systems failing but still fighting. Still trying, why don't they leave? A young Kaleri child asked, her voice frightened. They did so much already. Why don't they run away? Bashara had no answer. How could she explain to a child why strangers would die for them? She barely understood it herself. Aboard the defiant, medical officer Yuna worked in what used to be a storage corridor. It was now an emergency medical bay because the actual medical bay had been destroyed 3 hours ago. Wounded crew members lay on makeshift beds. Some would survive. Some wouldn't. Captain, Yuna transmitted to the bridge. We have 73 wounded, 15 critical. We need to retreat to provide proper medical care. Captain Hannah's voice came back, tight with emotion. If we retreat, the Kaleri die. Stabilize who you can. We hold the line. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. Then she went back to work. You heard the captain? We're not done yet. Specialist Jiwoo ran simulation after simulation on the tactical computer. Every approach she calculated ended in failure. The Ravagers had learned from their mistakes. Their formation was perfect. Captain, I can't find a winning strategy. They've sealed every weakness. Then we make a new weakness, Hannah replied. At the Galactic Council station. Admiral Craven stared at the tactical display. His military career spanned 80 years and 30 campaigns. He had studied warfare from 100 different species. They should be dead, he said quietly. By every military doctrine in the galaxy, they should be dead 10 times over. But they're still fighting. Consul Vexstar stood beside him. I was wrong about them. We were all wrong. We thought being from a death world just meant they were physically tough. We didn't understand that it made them mentally unbreakable. Ambassador Taemin remained at the observation window. He hadn't left in over 20 hours. A junior aide brought him water. Ambassador, there's still time to order a retreat? Nobody would blame humanity for trying and failing against impossible odds. Taemin took the water but didn't drink it. We don't retreat. Not when others need us. That's not who we are. But sir, they're dying up there. I know, Taemin whispered. I know each of their names. I approve their deployment. I carry that weight. But if we run now, if we teach the galaxy that humans make promises and then break them when things get hard, then we're not worth saving anyway. Director Wu Jin's voice came through the quantum communication link from Earth. He was speaking to the entire human fleet. All ships, Earth Command has authorized final protocols. You know what to do. Final protocols. Every captain knew what that meant. It was the last option when victory was impossible, but time was still needed. The Thermopylae Doctrine, named after an ancient battle on Earth where soldiers held a position until every one of them died, buying time for others to escape. Lieutenant Hyon responded first from his fighter. His voice was steady, accepting. Confirmed. Initiating Thermopylae Doctrine. It's been an honor serving with you all. But Captain Hannah had a different idea. A desperate, dangerous idea that made the Thermopylae Doctrine look safe by comparison. Negative, Command. Requesting permission to execute Prometheus Protocol. Silence on the communication channel. The Prometheus Protocol existed only in theoretical documents. It had never been used because it was considered too dangerous, too costly. It meant deliberately overloading a ship's fusion reactors while inside an enemy formation, turning the ship itself into a massive bomb. The survival rate for the crew was estimated at 8%. Director, Wu-Jin's voice returned, heavy with the weight of what he was authorizing. Captain Hannah, that protocol has a 92% fatality rate for the executing vessel. Are you certain? It's better odds than doing nothing, sir. Another pause. Taemin could hear people arguing in the background on Earth. Then Wu-Jin spoke again. Permission granted. Godspeed, Defiant. You've made humanity proud. Chief Engineer Dae-Young turned to his captain, horror on his face. Captain, Prometheus Protocol means we fly into the center of their formation and overload our reactors. We'd be... I know what it means, Hannah interrupted gently. Then she activated the ship-wide communication. All hands, this is the captain. We're going to execute Prometheus Protocol. It's a volunteer-only operation. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the other ships has 5 minutes. No judgment, no questions asked. You've all done more than anyone could ask. She waited. The bridge crew looked at each other. Slowly, one by one, they turned back to their stations. Nobody moved toward the evacuation shuttles. 5 minutes passed. Hannah checked the evacuation logs. 0 transfers. Not a single crew member had left the ship. Her voice cracked slightly when she spoke. Then let's make this count. Helm, plot intercept course with the Ravager command ship. Maximum acceleration. Engineering, begin reactor overload sequence. Set it for 30 seconds after we impact. The Defiant's engines burned hotter than they ever had before. The ship accelerated toward the center of the Ravager formation. Every weapon on every Ravager ship tracked them. It was obviously a suicide run. The Ravagers concentrated their fire, but while they focused on the Defiant, the other 7 human ships repositioned. They moved to exploit the gaps in coverage that the Defiant's sacrifice was creating on the Kaleri homeworld. Boshara watched one bright human ship separate from the others. It burned across space like a falling star. What are they doing? The Defiant took hit after hit. Hull breaches opened along its length. Entire sections were blown away. But the ship didn't stop. It didn't slow down. It kept coming. Captain Hannah stood at her command post, gripping the railing as the ship shook violently around her. Medical, get everyone to the core shelter. Engineering, status on the overload? Sequence armed, Captain, Dae-Jung reported. It'll work. When we hit, then that's all that matters. Hannah opened a final transmission. She knew it would be recorded. Knew that Earth would hear it. Knew that the Kaleri would hear it. Knew that the galaxy would hear it. This is Captain Hannah of the Earth vessel Defiant. To the Kaleri people, you are not alone. To Earth we held the line. To the galaxy, this is what Deathworld survivors look like when they have something to protect. She paused, looking around her bridge. At her crew, still at their stations, still doing their jobs, even as the ship died around them. For those who can't fight back. For Earth, for the Kaleri. Defiant, actual out. The ship smashed through the outer hull of the Ravager command ship. Metal screamed. Systems exploded. The Defiant buried itself deep in the massive vessel's core structure. Its momentum carrying it through deck after deck, the fusion reactors reached critical mass. The explosion was visible across the entire star system. It was pure white light, brighter than the sun. The Ravager command ship didn't just explode, it disintegrated. The antimatter stores within it added to the blast. The shockwave tore through 30% of the Ravager fleet formation. In the council chamber, every species stood in absolute silence. They had just witnessed someone choose to die so others could live. Most of them couldn't comprehend it. On the Kaleri homeworld, Elder Kelmira felt tears streaming down her face. Her species didn't cry often, but today she couldn't stop. They died for us. Strangers died for us. Boshara looked at the expanding debris field that had been a human ship full of living people just moments ago. They weren't strangers anymore, Elder. They were friends. The best friends we ever had. The explosion faded, leaving a debris field where the Ravager command ship had been. The remaining Ravager vessels hung in space suddenly without coordination. For the first time in recorded history, they hesitated. Captain Young-Soo, now the senior officer of the human fleet, didn't waste the moment. He was aboard the vessel Indomitable, one of the 7 ships still functioning. His voice came through clear and steady on the fleet channel. All ships through the gap. Target their power cores. Everything we have left. The remaining human vessels were in terrible condition. Shields gone. Weapons at minimum capacity. Crews exhausted and wounded. But they followed Young-Soo's order without hesitation. They poured through the breach that the Defiant had created. Without their command ship, the Ravagers were still individually powerful, but their perfect coordination was broken. They began making mistakes. Small ones at first. A weapon that fired half a second too late. A defensive maneuver that left a reactor exposed, The humans exploited every mistake ruthlessly. Lieutenant Hyan led his remaining fighters in one final charge. Only 9 of his original 36 were still flying. For the Defiant, he transmitted. For Captain Hannah, for everyone who didn't make it home. His squadron dove at a Ravager warship, weaving between point defense fire. They had no more fancy tactics. No more clever tricks. They simply flew straight at their target and fired until their weapons ran dry. Then they rammed the ship with their fighters, turning themselves into missiles. 5 fighters made it through. 5 explosions against the Ravager hull. The ship's reactor core went critical and exploded from within. Hyan was not among the survivors. Medical Officer Yuna worked without stopping aboard the Indomitable. Her hands were steady even as the ship shook from impacts. An assistant asked her, "Shouldn't we be evacuating? Preparing to abandon ship?" Yuna didn't look up from the patient she was treating. "We're humans. We fight with one hand and pull each other to safety with the other. That's who we are. Now get me the medical kit from storage. We have more wounded coming in." At the Galactic Council station, species representatives watched in stunned silence. Admiral Craven spoke with quiet reverence. "I've studied warfare for 80 years. I've never seen anything like this. They're not winning because they're stronger or have better technology. They're winning because they refuse to accept defeat." Consul Vexstar-S crystalline form glowed brightly. "I understand now. Deathworlds don't just make strong bodies. They make strong spirits? Earth didn't just teach humanity to survive, it taught them that they can survive anything. It gave them absolute certainty that they will endure no matter the cost." Ambassador Taman watched the battle unfold, his face wet with tears. A council aide stood beside him. "Sir, I don't understand. Why sacrifice so much? The Kaleri are just one species among thousands." Taman finally turned from the window. "That's exactly why. Because they're one species that needed help. Because if we only protect people when it's convenient or profitable, then we're no better than the Ravagers. We're just slower about it." The battle raged for 4 more hours. It was brutal close-quarters combat with no elegance, no grand strategy. Just determination against machinery, will against programming. The humans lost another ship. The Resolute 2 went dark after taking a direct hit to its bridge. But before it died, it launched every remaining torpedo at point-blank range, destroying 2 Ravager vessels. Then the Stalwart fell. Then the Endeavor. Each human ship that died took multiple Ravager ships with it. They refused to fall alone. Finally, as the Galactic Standard Day turned toward evening, the last Ravager vessel was destroyed. The remaining Ravager fighters, without any command structure, simply stopped fighting. They drifted in space. Unable to function without orders, the battle was over. Of the 12 human ships that had entered the Kaleri system, only 5 remained functional. The Indomitable, the Guardian, the Phoenix, the Relentless, and the Valor, all were heavily damaged. All had lost crew members. In total, humanity had lost 2,847 people. 7 complete ships. But the Kaleri homeworld still stood. Captain Young-Soo opened a channel to the planet's surface. His voice was hoarse from giving orders for hours. "Elder Kelmyra, this is Captain Young-Soo of the Earth vessel Indomitable. The Ravager fleet has been neutralized. Your world is safe." The response took a moment. When it came, Elder Kelmyra's voice was thick with emotion. "Captain, we have no words for what your people have done. You lost so much for us. We were strangers to you. Why?" Young-Soo looked around his damaged bridge. "At the empty stations where friends had sat just hours ago. Because the galaxy needs to know that someone will stand. That someone will fight, not for conquest or glory, but because it's the right thing to do." The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Every species heard what had happened in the Kaleri system. Humanity, the newest species in the galactic community, the ones everyone had dismissed as naive, had done the impossible. They had defeated the Ravagers. Emergency Council Representative Seok addressed the Galactic Council 3 days later. He was tired. He had been managing the aftermath, arranging transport for the wounded, coordinating with Earth Command. But he stood straight when he spoke. Members of the Galactic Council, Earth did not seek this fight. We would have preferred peace. But when we heard the Kaleri distress signal, we couldn't ignore it. Our planet taught us that survival often means protecting others. Because today it's them, tomorrow it could be us. We survive together or we die alone. High Chancellor Morlin stood before the assembled species. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace through diplomacy and avoidance of conflict. The Ravagers thrived because we were too afraid to fight. One Deathworld species has shown us that there are things worth fighting for. I propose we honor the fallen of Earth. I propose we learn from them. The vote was unanimous. 6 months later, the first Galactic Defense Coalition formed. It was a multi-species military force built on human tactical principles. Species that had never cooperated militarily before now trained together. Humans taught them what Earth had taught humanity, that survival means creativity, adaptation, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Ambassador Taemin visited the memorial built in orbit around the Kaleri homeworld. It was made from recovered hull fragments of the Defiant, shaped into reaching hands. The inscription was written in 50 languages. They were strangers from a distant world. They became our saviors. They taught the galaxy what courage means. Guardian Boshara, now a diplomatic attaché, approached Taemin. Ambassador, I've been studying human history. Your people fought so many wars among yourselves. You suffered so much. Yet when you reached the stars, you immediately offered to protect others. Why? Taemin smiled sadly. Maybe because we know what it's like to be afraid? To face extinction. We decided that we never want anyone else to feel that way if we can prevent it. Earth was harsh, but it taught us that we're stronger together than apart. They stood together, looking at the memorial. In the distance, they could see construction crews building new defensive platforms. The Kaleri would never be defenseless again. Boshara pointed at Earth, visible as a small blue dot in the distance. Your world tried to kill you for millions of years. It should have made you cruel and selfish. Instead, it made you the kindest species in the galaxy. How? Because, Taemin replied, we learned that the strong don't survive by being cruel. They survive by protecting the weak. Every human child learns this story from Earth's history. There was a time when we almost went extinct. We survived because we helped each other, because we refused to let the weak fall behind. That's the real lesson Earth taught us. A transmission came through from Earth. It was being broadcast across all Galactic Council frequencies. Director Wujin's voice was calm and steady. To any species in distress, to anyone facing threats they cannot handle alone, Earth will answer. The Deathworlders are coming, and we're bringing hope. 3 years later, the Ravagers returned. They came with a fleet twice as large as before, expecting to find the Kaleri still vulnerable and the galaxy still afraid. Instead, they found the Galactic Defense Coalition. 400 ships from 20 species, all trained in human tactics, all united in purpose. At the front of the formation flew ships from Earth, but beside them flew vessels from the Kaleri, the Venturi, the Felinians, and dozens of other species. The Ravagers calculated their odds. For the first time in their existence, they calculated that victory was uncertain. They retreated. News of the retreat spread across the galaxy. Species everywhere celebrated. The age of fear was ending. The age of unity had begun. On Earth, in the Military Memorial Garden, a new monument was unveiled. It listed the names of all 2,847 humans who had died in the Battle of Kaleri. At the top, in simple letters, it read, "They stood when others could not. They fought when others would not. They gave everything so others could live." This is what Deathworld survivors look like when they have something to protect. Ambassador Taemin stood before the monument with tears in his eyes. Beside him stood Elder Kelmyra, Guardian Boshara, and representatives from 50 other species. They had all come to pay respect to the fallen. "They changed everything," Kelmyra said quietly.